All right, that's a little quiet. I'm going to turn that up just a bit. Yeah, that's a bit better. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Rowan Neufeld. I'm the events coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. Tonight's event is coming to you live from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. Special hello to anyone who is watching the live stream right now. Thank you for joining us. Out of an abundance of caution, we just ask that the folks who are here in person keep your masks on for the duration of the event. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Ivar Mendez here tonight for the launch of Sariri, Travels Through Bolivia. So thank you, Dr. Mendez, for being here tonight. I'd also like to thank Heather Nickel at your Nicholsworth Publishing, as well as Angela White with the Department of Surgery, who both worked with us on tonight's event. Dr. Ivar Mendez was born in Bolivia, but has spent most of his life in Canada. A neurosurgeon and neuroscientist, he lives in Saskatoon, where he serves as the chairman of surgery at the University of Saskatchewan, as well as the unified head of surgery for the Province of Saskatchewan. As a clinician and scientist, Dr. Mendez's research focus is on functional neurosurgery, brain repair, stem cells, robotic neurosurgery, and computerized systems in neurosurgical applications. He is also the president and founder of the Ivar Mendez International Foundation, whose mission is to improve the nutrition, health, and education of children in the poorest regions of Bolivia so that they can reach their full potential. IMIF has established school breakfast programs, dental care programs, and educational programs in remote communities in the Bolivian Andes. And in addition to this, he has written several books. One of those is the reason that you're all here tonight. He's a gifted photographer and sculptor and has exhibited works in Bolivia, Canada, and the US. So at this point, I would like you all to give a very warm welcome to Dr. Ivar Mendez.
Very much, Rowan, for that introduction. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for coming to the launch, not only in person, but all the individuals that are online on the live stream. As you know, publishing a book is a team effort, and I want to first thank and acknowledge the contributions of several individuals. McNally Robertson for hosting this event, especially Rowan, who has worked on the logistics and the organization of the event. Sarah Enns, who is an award-winning writer and poet from Winnipeg, who was the first editor of the book. Heather Nickel from your Nicholsworth Publishing in Regina, that prepared the book for publication, both in the printed version as well as on the digital version. Heather designed the cover for Sariri, as well as the interior of the book. I was very appreciative of her attention to detail when she did that work. Also want to thank Peter Tang and his team from Houghton Boston Printers here in Saskatoon, who printed a really high quality book. Again, just an incredible team in Saskatoon with the state-of-the-art printing. So Sariri, what is Sariri? Sariri is an Aymara word. And Aymara is one of the two languages of the Andes. The other language is Quechua. Quechua is a language that was spoken by the Incas. I was always been fascinated with words that have multiple and complex meaning. And Sariri is one of those words. What Sariri means is an individual that actually moves, that is in movement. traveler that is seeking new landscapes, an explorer that is seeking new knowledge, a pilgrim that is a spiritual quest. And in that complexity in our word is really fascinating. And that is some of these languages of the Andes have the capacity. Single words can mean many things. Sariri describes my approach, my personal approach to travel and exploration. I have had this wanderlust since I was a child, and I think that has increased with time. My family immigrated to Canada when I was a teenager. And although I have lived most of my life in Canada, over the years, I wanted to explore Bolivia in a systematic fashion. I wanted to understand the place. I wanted to try to understand the geography of Bolivia, understand better the culture, understand its people. So over time, I've traveled to Bolivia, to the many regions of Bolivia. In the 20 essays that are part of Sariri are really a reflection of those travelers, a reflection of the places I've been, a reflection of the people I met. And these places really are the places that have fired my imagination and have left a mark in my own life. So the way I chose to bring those essays was in a very determined fashion. I wanted to show first the diversity of the geography of the country. So some of the essays come all the way from the peaks of the Andes, the Bolivian plateau. In some of those areas were 6,000 meters above sea level. And gone all the way to the lush basin of the Bolivian Amazon, where there's this incredible biodiversity, where you can find in a small area multiple species of animals and plants. So those rainforests have also impressed my mind during those travels. Some of these essays also reflect the historical and cultural areas that are important for Bolivia, such as the silver mines of Potosí. The silver mines of Potosí in the 16th century were the largest industrial complex on earth. They extracted so much silver from the silver mines that people calculated that you could build a bridge of pure silver from Bolivia to Spain. And that incredible wealth is what actually started the Industrial Revolution. It was one of the fundamental steps for the Industrial Revolution. And the silver from Bolivia was used by Spain to, of course, increase the domination as a big empire. But that silver caused an incredible amount of suffering. It is amazing that 3.5 million people died exploiting the mines, the silver mines of Potosí. The rate of people dying was so great that they called the mountain that ate men. So it was a terrible toll on the indigenous population of Bolivia. I've also included in these essays areas that were lost to Bolivia to armed conflicts with neighboring countries, such as Chile and Paraguay. And these areas have been really in the psyche of the Bolivian people. One of them has been the connection of Bolivia to the sea. More than 100 years ago, Bolivia lost its coast and access to the sea. And since then, it has been a landlocked country. Bolivia has been landlocked in the mountains, in the Andes. So I have traveled to these places to understand that history of where Bolivia was and what it's lost. And in one of those places in the Chaco area, in the eastern part, the war against Paraguay was in the 1930s. And my two grandparents, my maternal and my paternal grandfathers, really went to the war and fought that war. So I remember them when I visited that places. I've also included essays that are truly related to my own family, the history of my family, the sites where my ancestors lived, my grandparents and parents, and visiting those places where my family lived has given me an insight into the idiosyncrasies of my own family and some of the characters of my own identity. When I wrote Sariri, the English edition of Sariri, it was at the time of the pandemic. It was during the spring and summer of 2021. As you may remember, during that time, after the first waves of the pandemic, the initial waves, the number of infections was improving in Canada and Saskatchewan. But the pandemic was raging in Bolivia. The third wave was just devastating the country. Bolivia had run out of all hospital beds. People were dying in the streets. And I remember being asked to help during the pandemic. And as some of you know that have worked with me, we have developed here in Saskatchewan virtual care, the ability to provide care at a distance to remote and rural locations. And that technology was perfect to apply during the pandemic in Bolivia. And I was able to take 6 months as a leave of absence, in part thanks to my colleagues that took some of the leadership here. And I know Brian is here, that allowed me to go to Bolivia and work with the pandemic. It was a difficult and intense time for me. As I said, there were no beds in the hospitals. People were really suffering. And what we did is we implemented virtual care in their own homes, where relatives were taking care of their own relatives at home, using relatively simple technology, such as cell phones and pulse oximeters and other monitoring devices, as well as oxygen generators at home. So the way we did it is that the family would take care of those patients, their own families, and they were in connection with physicians which would monitor the care that they had, and if they needed it, they would come to the house and really follow up and monitor the patients. It was extremely successful because they only needed their cell phones to communicate with the monitoring devices. And that intervention saved many lives. There were hard times for me because during the time, the days were very intense, and did a lot of work with the physicians in the homes. And during that 6 months, about 250 healthcare workers that were working with me around La Paz, which is the biggest city in Bolivia, died in the pandemic. So there were intense days of 8 to 12 hours of work. And then in the evenings, I reflected about what I had seen, and also reflected on my travels to Bolivia. And it was at that time that I felt it was important to write those experiences and communicate those experiences with others. And that is how Sariri was born. And by the time I came back to Saskatoon, the manuscript of Sariri was ready. So something that during my travels I have experienced is how poverty affected the most vulnerable segments of the population in Bolivia, and specifically the children. For over all these years that I went to different in the most remote locations, I saw that really the children, which are really the future of communities, were disproportionately affected by poverty. And 10 years ago, I started a charitable foundation to really have a contribution to the children. I really feel that that change comes from within. Although we can help from the outside, the real change for improvement comes from within. And I felt that the children will be the ones, if they have the opportunity to develop their own potential, will be the ones that will change their own future and change their own communities. The foundation is being dedicated to really three areas when working with children in remote locations. The first one is provide them appropriate nutrition. The brain needs to develop when you're young to actually achieve its full potential, and nutrition is crucial for that. The second area was dental care, because dental care is a really difficult access service in the most remote locations. And you can imagine you're having problems with your teeth and you don't have anybody to help you. It's terrible. And I saw tremendous tragedies because of dental care. I remember traveling to one of those remote locations and getting to know that a 13-year-old girl had died because she had this toothache, and she wanted to knock that tooth with a knife and a stone, and actually puncture one of the blood vessels of her throat and died. Died because she had a toothache, and that was nobody that could help her. So we instituted a dental care program. And the third one, I think, which was kind of the most interesting program for me, was the institution of programs for art and creativity. I felt that art and creativity, if you can provide that to children, it will open their minds to new possibilities. You will open their minds to thinking outside the box and using that creativity to improve their own life, to improve their communities, to improve themselves. So the foundation that is working with the children has been working on these areas now for 10 years. And of course, all the proceeds of the book will go to support those programs. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is that during these travels to Bolivia and in my life in Canada, I have found that there is this relationship, that is a common relationship between indigenous populations in Canada and indigenous populations in Bolivia. There is this commonality in terms of how indigenous populations see the land and the landscape, how they see nature. In Bolivia, there is the concept of Mother Earth called the Pachamama. And the Pachamama is an important part of the cosmology and the culture of Bolivia. And the interesting thing is that the features of the geography, the landscape itself, is alive. The mountains that are called the Achachilas are non-human beings that are actually participating in the activities of the community. There is this relationship between the mountains and the people in the community, the mountains and the wind. The wind is called the Ankari, and is a messenger that can take messages from people to the mountains, to the gods. And that relationship is important because the mountains, the lakes, the wind, they all have feelings. They can be enraged, they can be jealous, they can get angry. And the people have to cater to them, maintain a good relationship, because it is important for the things that have to do with natural disasters, the agricultural cycle, the way the weather behaves. So that commonality was very clear to me as I interacted more and more with indigenous people, especially here in Saskatchewan. I remember a few years ago when I had an exhibition of photographs of the powwow, and it was taken to Bolivia. It was got great success. The people really related to them, even though the costumes were different, the dances were different. There was this common relationship. I felt that there were two different people, but they had kind of the same spirit. So what I would like to do now is I want to read one of these essays. And I have chosen this particular essay because it kind of reflects a lot of things that I just said: the geography, the culture, and this relationship with nature. It is called A Mirror to Calibrate the Senses. The rainfall is brief. Barely a couple of centimeters of water accumulates on the surface of the ground. Still, the effect is utterly magic. As soon as the rain stops, the boundary between earth and sky disappears. The vehicle in which I travel seems to float on a sea of cumulus clouds. It kind of glides over a surreal vastness of a gigantic mirror. And this mirror is the salt flats of Uyuni. In the salt flats of Uyuni, 10 billion tons of salt are confined to an area of about 10,582 square kilometers, about 3,656 meters above sea level, in the southern region of Bolivia, creating the largest salt flats in the planet. It is really the largest salt flats area anywhere in the planet. One of the really interesting things about this is that calculations using the Global Positioning System, GPS, have shown that the height of the ground in the salt flats only varies less than a meter. That makes the surface of the Uyuni salt flats the flattest region on Earth. It is so flat that the technologies that are working on space use the salt flats of Uyuni to calibrate the altimeters of satellites that are orbiting the globe. Although the annual precipitation in this region is minuscule, in the rainy season, which is between January and March, the salt flats are flooded by a thin film of water. It really converts the salt flats in the largest reflective surface on Earth that is easily distinguishable from space. You know, when Neil Armstrong was flying to the moon, one of the first things that he observed was this shining bright light that was coming from Earth. And it was the reflection of the sun that was coming from the mirror of the salt flats of the Uyuni. So we're heading to the interior of the salt flats to a hotel made entirely of salt blocks. The horizon is a straight white line that scratches the cobalt blue sky of the Bolivian plateau. The hotel appears first as a dark dot that is trapped between the salt and the sky, really as suspended in a boundary between reality and the imagination. As we get closer to that dot, the dot becomes the hotel building, and we can see that the blocks have a cafe au lait tinge that is caused by the alternating layers of clay and salt that form the surface of the salt flats. The salt flats crust is comprised of 11 layers of salt that build to a thickness of about 10 meters. Below this superficial layer, a lake of rain reaches about 120 meters deep. The Uyuni salt flats contain the largest untapped reserves of lithium in the world, a commodity that is increasing in global demand. Lithium, as you know, is a key component in the manufacturing of batteries that power smartphones and electric cars. It is estimated that the salt flats contain 100 million metric tons of lithium. Bolivia's prosperity may depend on Uyuni and its reserves of the alkali metal. Easily, the salt flats are the most popular tourist spot destination in Bolivia. The Uyuni salt flats receive over 100,000 visitors per year, and some question the negative impact of massive tourism in the fragile ecosystem. At the time of my first trip to the salt flats of Uyuni in the 1990s, there were very few visitors, and you can drive for hours without seeing anyone. That landscape, this landscape of vastness, whiteness, and solitude enthralls the mind. Standing on the middle of the salt flats when the sun is above your head, with no visible landmarks, not even your own shadow, you feel like a grain of salt that is floating on a magical and boundless canvas of blue and white. I recall experiencing for the first time in my life an overwhelming sense of the insignificance of human existence when confronted with the awesome presence of nature. Since then, I have similar feelings while traveling on glacial expanses on the Canadian Arctic. The landscape surrounding the salt flats is one of mind-blowing vistas. Yellow deserts, snow-capped volcanoes, and multicolored lagoons teeming with pink flamencos. During that first memorable trip that I had, I was particularly eager to see the Green Lagoon. I had heard of its color-changing waters, but nothing really prepared me for what I was to experience. The Green Lagoon is a mineral-laden lake close to the border with Chile, located at the foot of the Licancabur volcano that looms about 6,000 meters above its waters. We arrived at the lagoon early in the morning, and we found it a dirty gray color, no green at all. I was disappointed. I had been excited to see the famous turquoise waters. I sat on the rock on the shore, admiring the volcano Licancabur. The wind was blowing, and a white crest formed on the gray waters of the lagoon. Out of nowhere, a distinct bright green line appeared on the surface of the water, close to the opposite shore. Over a period of a few minutes, the line extended and dyed the entire lagoon of green, like a giant roller painting a canvas. The intense hue oscillated between bright turquoise and emerald green. You know, the shift from gray to green was so sudden, it was so marked, that it was hard to believe that it actually was occurring, unless you're seeing it. And every time I go back to the salt flats, I make the trip to the Green Lagoon to watch its changing colors. And the sense of awe never diminished. So I've since learned that the scientific explanation for changing the colors is that it has to do with the suspension of arsenic and other minerals in the water that are stirred by the wind that produces the greenish blue hue. Driving on the salt flats is not easy, especially during the rainy season, because there's no roads or guides that mark on any surface in the flooded lagoon of the salt flats. However, this is islands of cacti that are in the middle of the salt flats that really provide wonderful lookouts on the white landscape. And the Tunupa volcano sits like a sentinel on the north shore of the salt flats. We stopped the vehicle to admire the sunset. The sky is mirrored on the surface of the salt flats, creating a magical kaleidoscope of white clouds that are dyed by the golden rays of the sun. It feels as though that we are walking on the sky. And I have an intense desire to kick a particular round cloud as if it were a football. The sun reflections on the surface is so strong that it's almost blinding. Tunupa, the volcano, has its purple outline that's clearly visible against the sunset. In ancient times, according to an old indigenous legend, the mountains knew how to walk and fall in love. And the stunning volcano, a lovely maiden named Tunupa, fell in love with a mountain called Cusco. Unfortunately, Cusco abandoned the pregnant Tunupa. She became very sad, and while nursing her newborn, her tears mixed with her breast milk and spilled onto the earth to form the salt flats. Geologically, the salt is the product of the evaporation of prehistoric lakes in the region. In areas where the rate of water evaporation exceeds the rate of precipitation, such as the desert climate of the Union region, like water that cannot drain into the ground remains on the surface and evaporates. For over 40,000 years, salt minerals have thus remained on the surface of the land and become the famous salt flats. We settled into the Salt Hotel for the evening and have a dinner served to us on tables made of blocks of salt. The meal starts with a delicious soup of chuño. And chuño is the freeze-dried potato that was invented by the Incas and that can be transported and stays in good shape for many, many years. Chuño is small and black and is very light in comparison to a regular potato. The chuño can be stored for years, losing neither flavor nor nutritional value. Both are totally intact when rehydrated. After this wonderful soup of chuño, we go for a walk. The celestial vault of the night sky is exquisite, studded with flashes of stars. There's really no light pollution there. Their prehistoric luminosity took light years to reach the earth. And it dawns on me that this vast cosmic panorama, so immediate and sublime in the moment, is only a mere reflection of a distant past. This awareness of the immensity of the universe overwhelms the mind and the spirit. I think of the miracle of human life on our planet, in our cosmic origins, from matter that is generated in the blazing course of supernovas. We are children of galactic stardust. Absorbed by those thoughts, I failed to notice for some time that every detail of the firmament is reflected in the magic mirror of the universe at my feet. I can clearly see the bright expanse of the Milky Way, the Southern Cross, Orion's belt, and other constellations that ripple on the surface of the flooded plain. It's hard to resist the urge to rush onto the surface of the salt flats and dive into the mirrored cosmos. As I contemplate the universe unfolding before me in simultaneous and stereophonic splendor, I recall my time with the Chipayas, an indigenous community located on the shores of Lake Popo, north of Uyuni. I had enjoyed their warm hospitality and the opportunity to learn about their traditions and millenary culture. I had also become aware of the deleterious effects of climate change to their way of life with the drying of Lake Popo. A whole lake, bigger than Diefenbaker, dried completely in a period of about a year and a half. It was just an amazing thing. So although my time with the Chipayas was brief, they taught me a lot about living in harmony with the land and the value of human resilience. The Chipayas had also told me of the llama caravans that once crisscrossed the Unisol flats to transport blocks of salt to the urban markets of the Inca Empire. These caravans traveled at night to avoid the blazing sun of the day. The llama shepherds navigated the featureless landscape in consultation with the sky, but not the stars. The dark spots among the uneven distribution of star clusters in the Milky Way. So they didn't look at the stars to direct themselves, but it was on these dark spots. When the Chipayas told me a llama and a condor could be seen in the sky on clear nights, and that oriented them in their travels, I began to long that one day I could also travel in these ancestral Indian footpaths, accompanying a llama's caravan. That night in the Uyuni, the Milky Way spangled at my feet. I could clearly see in the midst of the starlight, dark outline of a celestial condor, its beak pointing north towards the Andes. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Perfect. We probably have time for one or two questions, and then Dr. Mendez, of course, is going to sign your books. Anyone have a question? And are you willing to say it into this mic so people on the live stream can hear it?
I think we just finished. Any questions from anybody?
Okay, so we'll keep the questions informal. Huge thanks again to Dr. Ivar Mendez for being with us tonight. We've got lots of copies of Sariri that are available to purchase. Our tills are open until 8 p.m. So if you would like a copy, feel free to just grab one from anywhere you see a book, except for Dr. Mendez's copy. Don't take that one. Yeah, he'll be signing books over there, and we'd be happy to personalize them for you. So thanks again to your Nicholsworth Publishing, to Dr. Ivar Mendez, and to all of you for coming tonight. Let's give it one more round of applause.
Outside.